Okay, we're on page 21, and we'll be talking about the needs of men and women. And let's pause for a prayer. And would you pray with me, please? Father, we're thankful, so very thankful for our families. We pray that you will help us to be good spouses, that we will be able to meet the needs of those whom we love. And Father, as we try to help others who are going through difficult times, we pray that you'll continue to give us the wisdom that we need to help them and to bless our study together tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. Let me say that needs are not the same thing as wants. You know, we all have wants, but a need is not the same thing as a want. I can want a whole lot of things that I don't need, and sometimes your wants are not very helpful. But when we talk about needs, these are real. These are real, and they are very common, and they are very pressing. A need is a need. I need air to breathe, I need water to drink, and I need food to eat. And those are things that are important for my life. Well, in a relationship, there are things that are nice, but there are a lot of things that are really very, very essential to make a good relationship. And those are the needs we're going to talk about at this point. Now, when someone needs something, he or she must have it to feel whole and to live normally. When needs are deprived, men and women have holes in their hearts and their lives that demand filling from some source. And when needs are not met by the spouse, there are times whenever people begin looking other places, and that's a bad thing. And this is why this needs to be discussed. When they fail to meet the needs of their mates, they leave their mates vulnerable to other parties' advances. Okay, he lists 10 things, emotional needs, Willard Harley does. Number one is affection. And this is especially needed by ladies, but also by men. Affection, that would be the need for non-sexual things, touching, hugs, cards, kisses, calls, all kinds of things that remind our mates, our spouses, that we care about. And that's important. Everybody needs to be cared for. And that is a great need. Men need affection, just like women need affection. Number two is the idea of sexual fulfillment. And of course, in 1 Corinthians 7 and verse 2, the idea is so that people may not get involved in immorality, sexual immorality. Let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. And that's the way that God intended for it. But sexual fulfillment is a need. It's not just a want, it's a need. And whenever one or the other is deprived of that, again, it sets up a situation where they may find some other party. Conversation. The need for discussion about matters of mutual interest. And Jackie and I had all of our family to our house over the holidays for 3 days, and we cooked a lot of food and had a lot of fun and laughed and watched our kids. It was wonderful, and we thought, well, okay, what are we going to do next year? And we had a long conversation about what we would do next year, and we decided we wanted to make some things for each of our kids. And so we went out and got a bandsaw and got a disc sander and a few things like that. And we decided, you know what, we could make some wooden rings, or we could make little hearts, smooth them up, and various other things that could be done by whittling and by cutting, and really make some things that would be very personal. Well, the communication between us and having a set goal of something we could do together is valuable. You don't want to just talk. You want to find ways to do things together. Harley, in his book, His Needs, Her Needs, says that a couple needs to spend many, many hours every week just being with each other, doing things together, and talking with each other. and having no TV on. You know, sitting there and watching TV together is not, that's only about a third of what should be. That doesn't count. It's doing things together and talking with each other, planning to do things together. Those are things that are really important. And the need for discussion about how to raise the kids, what the kids need, what our futures are. Jackie and I are at the point where we're thinking about, okay, what are we going to do whenever we get a little older and we want to develop a trust so we'll have something for our children and a few things like that. And all of those kinds of issues that husbands and wives need to think about. Number 4, recreational companionship. And that's the need to share some leisure events, some fun events together. And do things, just do it together. I guess the leisure event that Jackie and I most enjoy is watching Beat Bobby Flay. And who's going to beat Bobby Flay and all the fun that goes from that, and a few things like that. There's just a lot of things that can be done that can be a little fun and those kind of things. Number 5, and this is a need, honesty and openness. You know, honesty and openness is what allows couples to have trust and to be able to trust each other. And without that, you're not going to have the kind of relationship that you need. Anytime you think about a relationship, there is nothing that's more needed than good trust between the two. They have to be able to trust each other and to talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Number 6 is physical attractiveness. It's pretty hard as you get older to look as good as you did when you were younger. And it's nearly impossible sometimes, but physical attractiveness is important because it says to the spouse, trying to please you by the way I look is important to me, and I know it is a blessing to you. For men, their wives need financial support. They need to know that he's going to support them and support the things that they need to do. 2 cannot live as cheaply as 1. The old Scottish idea was just as wrong as it could be. And there are a lot of things that need to happen. Some husbands and wives have the household money, and then he has his money and she has her money. Well, there are a lot of things that needs to go on, and sometimes, you know, there are allowances given to both so that they're free to do with whatever they want. But the financial support that allows women to be able to do whatever she needs to do and is really very valuable. The fact that he's going to be there to meet her needs, and what women need is different from what men need. A guy can live a long time on very, very little, but women need a lot of fancy things, and life is filled with some pretties that maybe they don't mean a whole lot to him, but they mean a whole lot to her. And that's important. Domestic support. The need for refuge in a clean and orderly home. That's something that's valuable. Family commitment. That is the need for time and help with the children. Wives need their husbands to help them with the children and to be there and to do things with them. When a child is very small, they depend a great deal on their mother, but the father can do a whole lot with a small child. And I mentioned last night that every year the child gets older, the father begins to be more and more important to that child for a lot of reasons. But if he has built a good relationship with that child at a young age, it really helps. Children need both a father and a mother. And when you have either one of them that's absent, it really creates a lot of problems. But dads really need to be involved, in the lives of their children. Number 10 is admiration. Both people need profound respect and pride in themselves and need the support of their spouses. That's very, very important. Men need the have a great need for profound respect from their wives, but wives have a need for respect from their husbands. This is not always a one-way street. It's something everybody needs. It was Emerson Eggerichs who had a formula for loving your wife, and he mentions 6 things. Number 1, closeness. She wants you to be close. She wants to be able for you to hear her and to be close to her and to show affection to her, to tend to her needs. Openness. She wants you to open up to her. These are the things for how to love your wife. To understand. You know, many times wives will have a rough day and they may complain a great deal about this or about that. Unless they ask you to fix something, don't assume that you're there to fix her situation. She just wants you to listen to her, not to fix all of her problems. She can usually fix her problems herself. She just needs a sounding board. And unless she asks you to fix whatever it is she's wrestling with, the main thing you can do is to be there and to listen. The most important skill that any man can develop, and this is true whether you're talking about family relationships, it is true in the leadership of the church, it is true in the leadership on the job, it is true in any relationship, is the ability to really listen and to hear what someone has to say. We'll talk more about that later. Then there is the idea of peacemaking. That is the idea that she wants you to say, I'm sorry. Well, when you've done something wrong, say, I'm sorry. You know, there are some people who don't know how to do that. And that's really, I think, a bit of a weakness. There's a need to just say, well, I messed up and I'm sorry for it. And then try to make it right. Loyalty. She needs to know that you are committed to her. And you don't have an eye looking somewhere else, that you're committed to her. And that when she needs you, you're going to be there for her. It's difficult sometimes when you have a difficult job, always to pay attention to the needs of your wife. But when she does need you, you need to be there for her and set the other things aside. She needs to have a place in your life that nobody else has. And then there is the idea of esteem. You know, in Ephesians 5, one of the things that I think is so valuable is how that loving your wife is explained, how he cherishes her and how it's like an adorning her on a wedding day, all of those things that are there. You want to make her your queen. She needs to know that she's the queen of your life, that she's special, that nobody else has the place in your heart that she has. And Jesus loved the church like that, and husbands are to love their wives like that. That's not a small thing. This is how you love your wife, is you let her know that she's important, that you love her as much as you love your own body, that you love her as much as you love yourself, that she's important in your life. These are things that really help to express the need to love your wife. But then wives need to learn to love their husbands and to respect their husbands, to appreciate his desire to work and to achieve. And all men have a desire to better themselves, to achieve things. And you need to be there to be his biggest cheerleader and help to appreciate his desire to protect and to provide, that he feels like he has that need to protect you and to provide for you, and to realize that that's a real need in his heart, and the way you love him is to support him in that, to support the place that he has, to lead the family, to show his insight, to appreciate his desire to analyze and to counsel. Even though sometimes, you don't need fixing, he's the kind of guy that he's in the business of trying to fix things. That's just men. And to listen at times. Everything is a little bit of give and take in marriage. And sometimes you have to give a whole lot It's not 50-50, as I said last night. Sometimes it's 100-100. Sometimes you have to sacrifice completely. He needs relationship. Appreciate his desire for shoulder-to-shoulder friendship, that you not just be his wife, but also his friend. And to appreciate his desire for sexual intimacy. Now, men have a medical path that they go through, especially young men, and as they age, it's not quite as much, but young men have this cycle that they have of needing release, and after a period of time they don't, but then the time comes when that builds up where they have to have it. And that's more true of young men, that the way our bodies are made, that about every 3 days or so we're going to have more desire than we did if we've just had an ejaculation and we've released our pressure, but that pressure builds up again. And young married folks, and I'm talking to you, maybe as you talk to others, realize that this pressure begins to build as a little bit of time goes by, and those kind of things. When you're 19, it could happen mighty quick. When you're 30, it's not quite so quick, but it's there and it's real. So those are some things that are helpful for knowing about men. Then there are spiritual needs that each have. Spiritual values and beliefs need to be shared with husband and wife. There may be a disagreement here or there, but I think probably in most families there's more togetherness than there would be division. Shared spiritual experiences. Whenever we were young and we didn't want to leave our children, so I would go off on a mission trip, or then Jackie would go off on a mission trip. But the time came when we were both able to go to Israel and to see Israel together for 11 days. And another time came when we were able to do mission work on the island of Christmas Island in the South Pacific. And that was a wonderful experience. Jackie and I first met on a door knocking campaign in Illinois. We trained a little bit before we went on that, but we really got to know each other on the campaign itself. And those experiences of being there when our daughters were baptized, being there whenever we were at camp, all at camp and all those kinds of things, all of those experiences really are valuable. Spiritual responsibility. Mama and Daddy, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, are the ones that are primarily responsible for the education, the spiritual education of their children. Jackie and I have never assumed that it was the Bible class teacher, the youth minister, or the college teacher that was responsible for spiritually training our children. That was our responsibility. And we needed to do the best that we could. And of course, shared mission and goals. Some other things that are important, and I will talk about some of these things a little bit later on, is the undivided attention. The need for undivided attention. The need for intimacy, and there are different kinds of intimacy. We'll talk about good communication. We'll talk about the ability to resolve conflict. Keeping romance in marriage. I think it is very important, no matter what age your children are, for husbands and wives to have a date night ever so often. You'll have to decide on what you can do and what you can't do. But a date night means that you're spending that time just with each other and you're having a good time. That's important. The ability to handle chronic stress and worry is important. Everybody goes through stress. Some things are more stressful than others. Financial problems, family problems, work problems, school problems, all kinds of things can create stress. And the ability to handle that with each other and to be able to support each other is really important. But that meaningful time together is so important. As I mentioned, a need is different than a want. And one can be deprived of a want and yet still function well in life. But if you get deprived of a need, life does become very difficult. We're on page 23, Ron. It is Ron, isn't it? Okay. Here was an assignment that I gave whenever we were discussing these things. Number one, each partner should make a list of his or her 10 greatest needs. Indicate the greatest needs in marriage. They want to indicate those, maybe rank them, which is the greatest. Your list may be different than someone else. That's okay. You're an individual, and only you know what your greatest needs are. Each partner should share his or her list with his or her spouse and take time to explain why these are important. Make a plan of how you want to fulfill each of these needs. Be specific about what you can do to fulfill his need or her need. Tasks should be simple, doable, and not seen as a punishment for some past conflict, but rather something that can show and demonstrate love. You may want to focus only on the top 2 needs the first week. And then as time passes, move on to the other needs in the list. If you don't have a full list of 10 needs, then that's okay. You may want to just have 4, 5, or 6. Life does change. But the happiness of a marriage improves when each partner increases pleasing behavior and decreases unpleasing behavior. There's a difference between pleasing behavior and unpleasing behavior. Now, he reveals that he has a need for her to be physically attractive. Well, rather than focus on her weaknesses, they discuss some things that she can do to meet his need for an attractive wife. Maybe she needs to go to the hairdresser or the nail salon or whatever. But, you know, there are times to do that. Maybe she needs a new dress. Maybe he needs a new shirt. All of those kinds of things. Well, I'll let you read a little bit. Let's look on page 24. What to do if your needs are currently not being met. Number one is identify and acknowledge your hurt. These are I statements. These are not you statements. These are I statements. Now, when you make a you statement, you're pointing your finger at the other person and saying, you're responsible for my faults. When you make an I statement, you're staying away from the accusing and just saying, here's what I need. And that's how you want to try to express a lot of things. I need this because this is important to me, or this is valuable to me. So learn to make I statements to your spouse rather than you statements. A you statement is almost always going to be negative. You did this, you did that, you don't care. All that kind of grumbling and complaining never helps. But if you can say to them, I need some help here. I need this. This is something that's important to me. That helps them to understand you better. And let me mention to you, last night we talked about learning to love. You have to tell people how to love you. They don't read minds. I flunked mind reading in college. That was the one course I just did not do well on. And you flunked it too. And everybody has to kind of open up and let the others know. Number two, if somebody has sinned against you, then forgive the offender. Do put it away and let it go by. And say, let's, there comes a point in time in which maybe that can create a problem. If you get into bitterness, if you get into anger, if you get into things where all of a sudden you have conflict and you have a lot more anger, a lot more heat than light. What you want is light. So both of you can work together. And regardless of any change or lack of change in the offender, there are times to forgive. Communicate your needs. When our needs are not being met by those whom we love, we have to learn to communicate. And we need to be humble and loving and not so much focus on the negative behavior as Ask for them to make a change. Number 4, look to God for strength. God knows your needs, and He's committed to seeing them met. Number 5, strengthen yourself in the Lord and get busy and give yourself to others. Now, what to do if you have neglected or abused other people's needs? Well, there are times in coming to them when you are the one who's neglected the other, where you just come to them and you say, look, I have neglected you, and I know that's been hard on you. I'm sorry that I have done that. Confess your sin to God and to the person that you hurt. Yeah. Be specific in what you did. Use the words, I was wrong, in addition to I am sorry. Don't offer excuses, and ask for her forgiveness, for his forgiveness. And I think that makes a lot of difference. Let's look at some of these love breakers. Willard F. Harley, in his book Love Busters, now we talked about his needs, her needs, but the sequel to that book was Love Busters. In other words, the things that cause homes to break up. He lists 5 habits that destroy romantic love between husbands and wives. Let me tell you what, the romantic love is a bit of a it is a bit of a barometer of how you're doing. That's important. He says marriage is like a fishing net. Each day, fishermen use their nets to catch fish and sell them at the market. One fisherman takes his fish from the net every day, but he lets debris from the ocean accumulate. Eventually, so much debris is caught in the net that he can hardly cast it out of the boat. When he does, it's almost impossible to retrieve. Finally, in a fit of anger, he cuts the net loose and he goes home without it. He's unable to catch and sell fish again until he buys another net. Another fisherman removes debris every time he retrieves the net with the fish he caught. Each time he casts his net, it's clean and ready to catch more fish. As a result, he catches and sells enough fish to support himself and his family. Now, in this parable, the fish are emotional needs met in marriage, and the debris are the love busters, habits that cause unhappiness and finally destroy the relationship. Now, bad marriages are like the first fisherman's net: selfish demands, disrespectful judgments, angry outbursts, independent behavior, and dishonesty accumulate over time. The burden of the unhappiness they cause ruins a couple's willingness and ability to meet each other's emotional needs. Eventually, the marriage supplies no benefits to either spouse, and it ends in divorce or emotional separation. Good marriages are like the second fisherman's net. Love busters are eliminated as soon as they appear, making it easy for each spouse to meet the other's emotional needs. In the book of Ephesians, chapter 4, is a little bit of a statement there that I think is so valuable as far as trying to understand our relationships with others. All of us at times get frustrated. It's really easy for us to let those frustrations build up. But just like Ephesians 5 talks about the need to remain married and to cherish and love others, Ephesians 4 and verse 26, he says, be angry, and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. And do not give the devil an opportunity. I think it's really important to deal with each day's problems that day and then let it go. To not let it fester and build up. Anger is the kind of thing that will eat you alive if you feed it. And the one that you hurt the worst is yourself. Yourself. Many years ago, I was made angry. And the individual who offended me, he lied to me, he disrespected me, he did many things. And I was so angry I could have punched him out. But unfortunately, what I did was review in my head over and over and over what he did to me, and it was almost like he'd done it again. And I got really, really angry. And all I did was create a lot of unhappiness for myself. Now, instead of going to him and saying, look, you did this, or talking it out with him and telling him how I felt, I just let it build up in me. That was the wrong thing. If someone sins against you, you're supposed to go talk to them privately. If someone, you've done something wrong, you're supposed to go to them privately. Whether you're the offended or the offender, you're supposed to deal with it privately. I didn't do that. I stayed angry for a long time. And a couple of years later, I heard from a third party that they really regretted how they treated me. This person really regretted how they treated me. And what that did was allow me the opportunity to forgive. Forgiveness, there are times that God forgives for his own sake. I wished I remembered that passage. You might want to look it up in the Old Testament. But God sometimes forgives for his own sake. That's something powerful. And there are times when we need to forgive for our own sake. And so that's an important thing in dealing with a lot of difficulties. Good marriages are like the second fisherman's net. And Love Busters, that book, those things are eliminated as soon as they appear, making it easy for each spouse to meet the other's emotional needs. It's just best to deal with every problem that day and not let it fester. Angry outbursts destroy romantic love. I'll tell you what, if you want to have a date with your wife and you get angry at her and have an angry outburst, you can just be sure that that day is not going to be a day when you can be romantic. I mean, that's love 101, isn't it? I mean, anybody knows that. But that's the thing. But if every time, every day, you have an angry outburst and take whatever frustrations you had on the job or at other places out on your family, there isn't anybody in that family going to love you. They may love some things about you, but boy, you're going to be somebody they don't want to be around. They want to be somewhere else rather than be with you. That destroys romantic love because they're motivated by a desire to punish the person who made you unhappy. And that anger, a lot of times they're punishing the spouse. And so you withdraw love units each time you lose your temper. That's a big withdrawal from your love bank, is when you get angry. Everybody has a love bank, and either you're drawing interest or you're making withdrawals. And when you get angry, you make a big withdrawal. And it's hard to make it up. It takes time. It may not be quick. Disrespectful judgments occur when one spouse tries to impose his or her system of values and beliefs on the other. The one making disrespectful judgments feels he is teaching valuable lessons that will ultimately benefit his spouse. But the spouse on the receiving end of that generally regards such effort as arrogant and rude. And that can be that way. Number 3, annoying behavior is usually when one person seeks to win the emotional expense of the other. And they can be annoying. They want the emotional expense of the other. In other words, I don't care what you think about this or that, I'm still going to be annoying anyway. Because I like being annoying. Well, that doesn't help in the relationship. Number 4, making selfish demands. The demanding spouse imposes a punishment if the demand is resisted. I'm going to make you do what I ask you to do, and if you don't, you're going to pay for it. Romantic love is sacrificed each time a demand is made. Thoughtful requests can achieve the outcome of selfish demands without sacrificing romantic love. A request is different than a demand, and that's important. Number 5, dishonesty, even if it's not discovered, prevents couples from solving marital conflicts. Solutions go unnoticed in a fog of disinformation. Sometimes that happens whenever one has a bunch of secrets from the other, and those secrets can get found out. You can't hide things forever. Yes.
Isaiah 43:25.
Isaiah
43:25.
I need to write that down. I think that's such an important thing, to forgive.
Even I am he who blots out your transgressions for my own sake, and I will not remember your sin.
Yeah. Thank you. I was thinking Isaiah was where it was. I knew it was in the prophets, but I wasn't sure where. But those are the kinds of things that I think make such a big difference. He mentioned Isaiah 43:25, and that's a great passage about God forgiving for his own sake. If you want to have happy children or admiring parents or a successful career or $1 million, they have to be secondary objectives. You can't have them at the expense of your spouse's feelings. A strong marriage often builds a foundation for the achievement of all these other objectives in life. But these other things don't build a foundation for romantic love or marriage. And that's what has to be first. By the way, when I talk about romantic love, I'm not just talking about sex. I'm talking about the feelings of each person and the care and the concern that is there. Here are top 10 stumbling blocks for married couples. This was a survey taken by David Olson. 21,501 married couples. 93% of them talked about we have a problem sharing leadership equally. My partner is sometimes too stubborn. 87% said that. Oh my. Having children reduces our marital satisfaction. No joke. 84%. My partner is too negative and critical. 83%. I wish my partner had more time and energy for recreation with me. 82%. I wish my partner were more willing to share feelings. 82%. I always end up feeling responsible for the problem. 81%. I go out of my way to avoid conflict with my partner. 79%. That's not all bad. We have difficulty completing tasks or projects. Our differences never seem to get resolved. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now let's remember Ephesians 4, verses 31 and 2. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. We ought to practice that at home just like we do with other people. We sometimes can be far more compassionate with a stranger than we are with the person that we live with. Colossians 3:12-15. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved. Put on compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. And as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. Now that's how we are supposed to treat people within the church. But it's also how we ought to treat our spouses and our families. Here's another list of top 10 marital mistakes. And some of these things are just like what we've talked about. But I thought it was interesting to look at 2 or 3 different perspectives. Number one, lack of respect. I tell you what, don't ever badmouth your spouse to your friends or associates. You just don't do that. I can't do that at work because my wife's brother and nephew work there. It'd get back, I would be in trouble. And I can't badmouth any in her family either because they live, you know. But why badmouth anyway? You know. I tell you what, I preached for some churches in times past where 40% of the congregation was kin to each other. It was a congregation of about 100, but 40% of them was in one way or another kin to each other. And man, you have to be careful what you talk about. You have to be careful of what you say. And if you're going to be a godly person, you don't talk bad about others. You just don't do that. Spouses need to be thanked. If a kid does good, thank him. If a wife does good, thank her. If a husband does good, thank him. People need to know they're appreciated. That's part of respect. That's part of those things. Number 2, not listening to your spouse. This includes allowing your mind to wander, paying more attention to the computer or television set, and ignoring body language and interrupting. You ever had your wife say something that was totally nonsense and you look at her funny and she says, well, I was just wondering if you were listening. I was just wondering if you were listening. Apparently, if you're looking at the TV while she's talking to you, she feels like she's in second place. That's true. That's true. Body language can make it real clear you're not interested. I saw Buck Owens one time. I said hello, and then he looked at me like I had really violated his personal space. And he didn't want to talk to me anymore, and it was very obvious from his body language. Well, your body language says what you feel. And be very, very careful. I didn't care for Buck Owens after that. Lack of sexual intimacy. This is a death knell for a marriage. Seek medical counsel and therapeutic counseling if necessary. Don't leave your spouse wondering why you aren't interested in sex. And that happens with men and it happens with women. And whenever 2 people refuse to kind of be with each other, it can really be a problem. And it can be a very great difficulty. Number 4, always having to be right. This includes lecturing your mate or having to have the last word. Very few people can love a know-it-all forever. Admit once in a while that you made a mistake or that you don't have all the answers. Don't answer every simple question with a long-winded dissertation on the topic. I put that one in because my wife reminds me that when someone asks me a question, I tend to do that. It's the preacher in me. A dissertation, yes. Not walking the talk. In other words, you talk like you're a pretty good husband and you don't really walk the way you talk, or a good wife. Sometimes hurtful teasing. We have to be careful how we tease and how much we tease. If your spouse says the teasing is hurtful and considers it a put down, you better take that seriously because it's inappropriate and stop it. Claiming that your spouse doesn't have a sense of humor or is too sensitive is really being inconsiderate and unkind. You can really cut and slice people with words. And we need to be careful how we speak. And hurtful teasing, even if you're just teasing, can be it can be bad. Dishonesty, we've talked about that. Being annoying, being selfish or greedy. This is when you spend money on yourself but make a big deal if your spouse spends a dime. That's not good. This is not wanting to open your home to friends and family because you prefer to be alone and don't want the hassle of entertaining. Sometimes you can just do that. And whenever they have that need to be with other people and to entertain others, hogging the remote, going only to cheap restaurants when you can afford better, only watching movies that your spouse will not see, and you know that. And then, of course, the temper tantrums. Okay, we're going to stop here at this point, and I know that we'll probably take a little longer break over here. So we'll stop at this point, and we'll try to be back, 12 to 15 minutes after the hour. We're going to try to make these 45-minute classes. I noticed that we could not make a 50-minute class. It's going to have to be 45 minutes. And so that's what we'll do with the next class. We'll start with the things that relate to attention and affection. And we'll be far more positive rather than talk about all the negative things in this next little part. I don't like to only be negative. I want you to find some ways that can really help. So that's what we'll do. And we'll stop at this point and we'll pick back up in about 12, 15 minutes. And I'm going to turn off my microphone.
Yes, it's still recording. I don't know. Stop. Hey, Dave, everybody. Sorry, Dave. Okay.
Bill, can we say a quick prayer?
Sure.
Let's pray. Holy God.
Now, y'all can continue at ease, as the military would say, and do what you need to do. You won't offend me if you're eating while I'm talking. So, we're on page 28, where we're going to talk about attention and affection. I think this is just such an important thing in relationships for husbands and wives. Communicating caring deeds. Ask each other the question, what would you like me to do for you to show how much I care for you? And the answer must be positive, specific, and something that can be performed daily. That's a good question to ask. What can I do? Now, we're not talking about something impossible. We're talking about something simple. And of course, the purpose of each action must be to increase positive behavior, not to decrease negative behavior. Now, that's real simple. You want more positive and less negative. The behaviors must be those that can be done on an everyday basis. The behaviors must be minor ones, those that can be done easily. Avoid making vague comments by writing down beforehand your answers to the question, what would you like for me to do to show you how much I care for you? The small cherishing behaviors must not concern past conflicts. Your requests must not be old demands. That is, the request must not concern any subject over which you've quarreled. These requests should be, as much as possible, be something only your partner can fulfill. If these are things that a hired hand could perform, they may create problems. For example, if they are mostly task-oriented, like wash the car, take out the trash, clean out the camper, have the dishes and the house all cleaned up by the time I get home, well, that doesn't really do very well. They really don't reflect intimacy and the cultivation of a personal relationship. Some better responses would be, ask me what excites me about my new job. Or turn out the lights and let's sit holding hands without talking. Or rub my back for 5 minutes. Now, each list should include 15 to 18 items. That's a lot. But maybe, you want to start with 3 or 4. And you may not want to all do them in the same day. You may want it to, be what you're going to do for the next month. Those kinds of things. Sometimes you have to take baby steps, and then you can be a little bit more. But here are some suggestions that are in the caring list. Say hello to me and kiss me in the morning when we wake up. say goodnight to me and give me a kiss. Sometimes bring me home a pretty flower or leaf and give me a kiss. Call me during the day and ask, how's it going? You can smooch over the phone. That's all right. Say something pleasant. Put a candle on the dinner table and turn off the light. Hold me while we're watching TV. Leave me a surprise note in the luggage or something. Yeah.
Number 7, don't use toothpaste right on the mirror.
Okay. Don't use toothpaste and write on the mirror. Okay.
I did that.
Oh, that's not, no.
That's hard to get off.
Take a shower or bath with me when the kids are gone. Kiss or touch me when you leave for work. Tell me about your best experience during the day. Hold my hand in public. When I am home, I very rarely preach at Edmond, only occasionally. And that's the first time, really, in our lives that I get to sit with Jackie through the whole service, because I've always had to be up to preach. And let me tell you something, when we sing and when we pray, we hold hands. And that's important. That's important. Tell me I'm nice to be around. Praise me in front of the kids. Ask me how you can pray for me. Isn't that interesting? Look at me and smile. Tell me how much you enjoy having breakfast with me. Tell the children in front of me that I'm a good parent. Ask my opinion about world affairs or the sermon at church. And always be positive if it's Daniel. Use endearing words with me sometime. When we're out, wink or blow a kiss at me. If you can do it when nobody's watching. Put on a favorite record and come over and sit next to me and hold my hand. And wash my back in the tub. Who has records this day and time? It may have to be something else. Put on a favorite record and come sit with me. Wash my back in the tub or shower. Hold me at night before we go to sleep. There's all kinds of things. These are just caring things that husbands and wives can do for each other. And exchange those lists and talk about them. You know, if couples increase their positive actions towards each other, they will eventually crowd out and eliminate the negative. The consequences of behaving in a positive way override the negative. In addition, behaving in a loving, caring way will generate the habit of responding more positively and can build feelings of love. Now, here's what you need to understand when it comes to staying in love. Let's talk about staying in love. Whatever made you want to love that person in the first place is usually the same kind of things that make you want to love them later on in life. Yeah. And I think couples have to work at keeping their marriages strong and loving and caring. You have to work at this. A good marriage is worth having. A man who loves his wife loves himself. That's what the scripture says. And if you work at it, it's so important. A woman that loves her husband loves herself. It's important. And we have to work at it. It's like any other thing that you have. If you work at it, you get the weeds out and you plant the flowers. You get the things that hurt out and you make sure that the things are positive and good. That makes the difference. You increase the loving, caring things. You decrease the things that are the briars and the stickers and all the things that create problems. You eliminate them. You have to work at it. And it's intentional. Love is an intentional thing. Love doesn't just happen. You have to intend to make it work. And you can't stop. You really, there's no stopping place. If you've been married a long time, you still need to give them the kind of respect and love that they need. I don't care if you have been married 65 years. That's what our brother's been married, and I guess that's probably the longest in this room. But that's a wonderful thing. It's something that is worth looking at and saying that is a great accomplishment. But you know what people may need at a later point in life may not be exactly the same thing they needed when they were young. But everybody needs a kiss. Everybody needs a hug. Everybody needs to know they're special. Everybody needs to have a smile. Everybody needs a thank you. Everybody needs a card or a little note. Everybody needs something that says, I care about you. And that's what keeps people together. The need for touch. UCLA researchers have concluded that meaningful touch is crucial to the formation and preservation of intimate relationship. F.B. Dressler has shown that a woman in particular needs 8 to 10 meaningful touches each day. That's not 8 to 10 each week or each month. That's each day. Just to maintain physical and emotional health. More than 80% of a woman's desire for meaningful touch is non-sexual. Communication studies show that nonverbal messages are actually more powerful than verbal ones. A hug, anything that can make her feel special. Affection is very, very important. Now, affection is non-sexual. It's affection. And that's something that is as much needed by women as the sexual things are needed by men. Top 10 strengths of happy couples. I'm very satisfied with how we talk to each other. Happy couples, 90%. Unhappy couples, only 15%. I was in my room this morning, and I do not know what all was said, but it was said very loudly. And one of them was crying half the time, the other was shouting the other time. And it was a real argument going on across the hall. Across the hall. And I was hearing it in my room with the door closed. But I could still hear it. Well, you know, that's not going to make for happiness for sure. Number 2, we are creative in how we handle our differences. And that comes from communication. You know, people do things differently. You grew up in your household and you fixed food one way, and I grew up in a different household, and my mother fixed it different than the way that my wife fixes it. My mother had cornbread that never had sugar in it. My wife has cornbread that always has sugar in it. That's okay. You know what? I like both kinds. That's creative to like both kinds. My wife learned how to make potato salad the way that my family always made potato salad. And it has to have a little pickle juice and a little bit of mustard in it, and it has to have some onion and all the other things. I don't know what all goes in it. I just know how it tastes. But she has me taste that potato salad before she serves it, to say, yeah, that tastes just like what I grew up with, especially if some of my family's coming over. And so it's that way. And that's special. That's creative. That really is very special. We feel very close to each other. 98% say happy couples, we feel very close to each other. But only of the unhappy ones, only 27%. You see the differences there? My partner is seldom too controlling. 78% would say that, but 20%, they would have a partner that's controlling. When discussing problems, my partner understands my opinions and ideas. That is so important. And if you don't understand, ask a question. You know, there's no problem with saying, I don't think I fully understand that. Help me understand it. I'm not trying to be critical. I just want to understand. And those things are important. To have a spouse that understands when you're upset, when you're frustrated, when something's not gone the way you want it to go, whenever you have some goal that you're not reaching, when you feel like you have failed. All of those kinds of things that take place when you have a spouse that's able to sense what is inside of you, that makes all the difference in the world. And that's what we have to be able to do, is to understand and to understand their ideas and why maybe they do some of the things that they do. Number 6, I'm completely satisfied with the amount of affection from my partner. That's true in 72% of the happy couples, but it's not true in 72% of the others. We have a good balance of leisure time spent together and separately. That's 71%. Now, I love my wife, but I tell you what, I really get tired of Hallmark Christmas movies. And the thing of it is I have watched enough of those that I have seen the reruns. And I know how it's going to end. And there is always that 59-minute kiss. You know, the kiss never takes place until the 59-minute mark. And I'm wondering, guys, can't you hire somebody that has a new outline for what that is? 2 hours with, there's going to be a Santa. There's going to be a buying a tree. There's going to be somebody who has gotten a new job and then decides not to take it. I'm sorry.
Every movie's the same story.
Yeah, it is. Just a little bit. And this town knows how to do Christmas better than anybody in the whole world. And that's it.
You all just.
Now, I watched a good one today. The secret ingredient, the baker, that did the contest.
Oh yes, the secret ingredient.
And her ex-fiance or whatever went over to Paris. And the baker chef over there, they ended up competing. It's a program I watched about 5 times.
Well, the other one was the chocolatier, you know, with the royal couple. I'm amazed that they have the royal family come in every once in a while in some little country that doesn't exist. And it always ends up the same way. He marries the what is it? She's the one who takes care of the kid instead of the rich lady that they were supposed to marry from the time they were young. But they really don't love each other. Yes, he does. A nice pickup. Oh well. That's probably better than watching some of the things that I have watched. She just was not willing to watch some of the stuff that we. And sometimes it's once in a while we can find a creative way to do things together, like watching Beat Bobby Flay or one of the other cooking shows. Iron Chef has never really quite done it for me quite like Beat Bobby Flay. They have fun that one. And some of the. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Oh, yeah, she watches that, and I think the dear old lady that's always the judge and supposed to be the queen of everything that is about baking, she's really quite something. She'd be hard to satisfy, I think, at least when it comes to baking, because she's so good about it.
Just cool.
We did a long time ago watch Justin Wilson. Of course, we liked the stories he always told. Jackie's daddy always watched him, and Jackie's last name Dodgen is a French name, and so he liked this guy who spoke a little bit of a French accent. Number 7, we have a good balance of leisure time spent together. We talked about that. Number 8, my partner's friends or family rarely interfere with our relationship. 81%. It is an unfortunate thing that sometimes the parents of either the bride or the spouse just work to end marriage in an unfortunate way. They maybe don't like the person that their child has married. And there have been times whenever the parents themselves are the ones who drove a wedge between a husband and wife, and that's not a good thing. A man is to leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. And parents may not like the guy that their daughter or son is married, but they need to trust and make the most of what they have. You know, sometimes your in-laws can drive you nuts, but you don't need to let them drive you nuts to the point that you build a wedge in their marriage. That's the wrong thing. The very much wrong thing. Number 9, we agree on how we spend money. 89%. I am satisfied with how we express spiritual values and beliefs. 89%. You'll notice those are some strengths of happy couples. They have these things in common. Learning what happy couples do well can be quite helpful. We can learn from the experiences of others. It is possible to predict with 93% accuracy whether a specific couple was happy or unhappy using these top 10 items. Isn't that interesting? When we learn from the mistakes of others, you won't live long enough to make them all yourself. So it's helpful to learn from them. All right, let's talk about communication for a little bit. I have this guy, and he's looking, and he says, I know you think you know what I'm saying, but what you think I'm saying and what I'm actually saying may not be the same thing. There is what a person says, what a person hears, what a person intends to say, and what a person thinks he's saying. All of those are in communication theory. Whenever I was taking courses and preaching and other things, I took a course in communication strategies. We had to learn communication theory. And one of the things that was so interesting about all of that is that people hear sometimes something that you never said, or they think you said something that you didn't say. Let me just suggest this. If you heard somebody say something that maybe was offensive, or maybe you disagreed with very strongly, it is better to ask, listen to this, it is better to ask than it is to accuse. It is always better to ask than it is to accuse. And let a person explain what they meant. I have an editor, and everybody needs an editor. I have an editor for every book that's back there. There's another fellow that goes through that book with a fine-tooth comb, and 2 or 3 of his employees also go through it, make sure every word is spelled right, that every sentence is done just like it's supposed to do. And once in a while, he'll send me a little email saying, well, you know, this is what it says, and this may lead to this conclusion. And I was reading through this, and of course, when you're reading something, you do not have the tone of voice. The tone of voice is quite a bit of communication. And what he read and drew from that was not what I intended to say. And so we both made the edit to cut some words out so that it would say exactly what I wanted it to say, because it would mislead. Because what I intended to say and what he thought I was saying were 2 different things. And I did not want other people to think that what I said was the other thing, because that would have been wrong. Yes.
I think sometimes in the realms of texting, you lose a lot too. You don't know the person's voice. You don't know what they're meaning by it. You know, a text can be taken completely out of context and it not be meant the way you typed it.
This is why it is always better to ask than it is to accuse. Because sometimes people do not word things. I've misspoken. Daniel, I don't believe you've ever misspoken. I haven't even you know, it's just preachers get accused of that from time to time. One of the things that I have done, I have had people write to me a flaming, email message or some kind of thing, and why did you say this? And they went on and on and on. They weren't paying attention, and they thought I said something that I did not say. One of the good things about writing a manuscript is I could go back to that manuscript, to the paragraph that they thought I said something, I can copy and paste it into the email and send it back to him and say, this is actually what I said. This is the words that I said, because when I'm doing the search program, I am reading my manuscript. And it is amazing how many of them say, oh, I'm so glad, you made that clear to me. Now, sometimes it's a sincere thing. They're not just being mad, but people don't always hear what you say. And hearing and listening is a very, very important thing. Yes, ma'am.
We experience that in medicine. You see, and like even at this point, so in pharmacy, what we were saying to our patients sometimes was not what they were hearing. So we would try to get them to reflect back to us what we had suggested or asked about. But I've also found that in evangelism, it's nice to be a pair because you will hear things differently too.
Yes.
We'll come away from a conversation and I'll be like, I didn't say that, and so together, I think it helps in that respect too.
One of the things that I do is I listen to every search program. Sunday morning, you can be sure that I will be tuning into the search program. Now, I already know what he's going to say. I wrote the script for him. But I watch it to see, did I communicate what I intended to communicate? And I work very, very hard to do the very best job I can, not only when I'm writing the script, but also whenever we're doing production, to make it as clear and as plain as possible so that there's not any misunderstanding. But in spite of all that, we still have some who misunderstand and think I've said something that I really didn't say. And so whenever I have that information in written form and recorded form, that really has helped with a lot of that. You don't have that when you're having a conversation that's just you and them. But it is so hard for us to hear ourselves and to see ourselves as we are. And one of the things that I think is so vital for those who teach in any form and those who counsel in any form is to be able to kind of find a way, as you're mentioning, Katrina, to have somebody there who can say, look, what you said came out maybe a little stronger than you wanted it to, or maybe you were not as kind as you could have been. Feedback is important. I like to watch myself rather than ask a bunch of people. That way nobody embarrasses me. And very honestly, I'm far more critical of myself when I watch a program that I have done and see things, and I know things that you don't know about how it's done. And so I see things, and so I look at little bitty things that maybe I forgot to do this or forgot to do that you would not know about, but has been in part of things. So it's a lot of little bitty things. The difference between being good and being great is in the details. And as you preach, it would not do a bit of harm every once in a while to watch either a video or listen to a recording to hear yourself. Now, nobody likes the way they look, and nobody likes the sound of their voice. And I am the same way. But I go through the difficult task of doing that because I want to do my best every time. And that's a part of what it means to be a good husband and a good wife, where you say, I'm going to do the best that I can do every time. Communication is really the barometer of any relationship. And couples who don't communicate well will find their relationship in trouble. Even when a man and woman genuinely love each other, nothing can short circuit or kill a positive relationship quicker than poorly or unfairly communicated messages. For communication to take place, the hearer must not only understand what the speaker is saying, but also understand what the speaker was intending to say. If one speaks a message with the wrong tone of voice or with a poorly chosen word, he may well indeed communicate that which he never intended to communicate. If one's body language accentuates a message the speaker never intended, the listener may come away hurt or defensive. Both people must communicate their messages with love and respect. And the greatest depths of intimacy come when two vulnerable people open themselves up to each other to honest and caring communication. The most important thing a couple can do to improve their communicating and listening skills is to become aware of their communicating styles and habits. Once they learn how their style of communicating hurts or calls for defensiveness. Then they can discontinue that style and begin a new one. You know, sometimes we have to just kind of pay attention. Job 13:5. Job had some miserable comforters. And he said, oh, that you would keep silent, and it would be your wisdom. I wish you'd have hushed. And there are times when people can go on and on and on about something, and maybe it's not even about their spouse, but sometimes it's better if they just hush. Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. Proverbs 15:14, the heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge. When you understand, you want to know more. You know, there's maybe something missing there. But the mouths of fools feed on folly. The heart of the wise, Proverbs 16, verse 23, makes his speech judicious and adds persuasiveness to his lips. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Now, you don't want to be fake, but you do want to be gracious and loving and sweet. Proverbs 18, a fool's lips walk into a fight, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul. I remember one lady told me one time, she said to me, well, I speak my mind. And I said, yes, ma'am, you do. And she did. She did. And I said to her, you know, sometimes it's wise not to speak your mind. And I was trying to be kind to her. She's going to speak her mind. Well, I can appreciate that. And there's a time and a way to do things. If you speak your mind, do it kindly and humbly. And sometimes it's not worth it. A fool's mouth invites a beating. You better be careful who you speak harsh to. That person may be able to use words and cut you to ribbons real quick and tell you what for. Ooh. Proverbs 18, if one gives an answer before he hears, it's his folly and shame. Don't assume. 29:11, a fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. 29:20, do you see a man who is hasty in his words? There's more hope for a fool than for him. Ooh. Matthew 12:35, the good person out of his good treasure brings forth good. The evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth what is evil. I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give an account for every careless. A careless word is a rotten word. Something that doesn't bless. Every careless word they speak, or by your words you'll be justified, and by your words you'll be condemned. We're going to be judged by our words as much as anything. Psalm 141, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. That's kind of a prayer, isn't it? When you have a tough conversation, when you're having a real tough conversation, you're having a situation where you have to get real straightforward with someone and it's tense, pray about it a whole lot before you enter in that conversation. Be sure that you know what you're going to say and that you've thought through what you're going to say, and make sure that what you're saying is true. let me suggest 2 or 3 things that you do if you get into a discussion with someone with whom you disagree. Number 1 is slow down your words. Speak slower. Speak slower. Number 2, speak softer. Don't get loud. Point 3, do not speak with high tones like you're stressed. High tones talk stress, a little bit anger, a little bit of this and that, and talk in lower tones. Slow, soft, low tones, and with humility and with patience. Those things are far more persuasive than getting loud and getting mad and being able to get that high note and anybody, and after a while they don't listen to anything you have to say. You see the difference between the two? 2 Timothy 2, let's turn to that passage. 2 Timothy 2:24. I just think this is so important, so vital in how you deal with people. This is not just the person who's lost and has wandered away from the truth, and you want to bring them back, you want to talk to them. This is evangelism. But it's also how you deal with everybody. This is how a man of God, a woman of God deals with people. The last 3 verses of 2 Timothy 2, verse 24 to 26. And the Lord's bondservant must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all, able to teach, patient when wronged, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition, if perhaps God may grant them repentance leading to the knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil, having been held captive by him to do his will. If you get angry, you will always lose. If you've ever been to a debate, I went to a debate many years ago in Blanchard, Oklahoma, and it was a debate over baptism. And there was one guy who kindly and confidently presented what the Word of God said, member of the church. And the person that he was debating, all he wanted to do was to slap the Church of Christ, and he made a bunch of false charges, and he got angry, and he couldn't answer the Bible arguments that the other guy was making. So what he did was start using that old thing of what's called an ad hominem argument. That is an argument against the person. So whenever someone starts arguing loud and they start speaking out against the person, you can be sure that they don't really have any good arguments to respond to what's being said. That's what you do not want to do. In any kind of discussion, there are 2 contests going on. One is the contest of content. Content, that is, what's right and what's not right. What is the truth of the matter? That's the content. But the other contest is a contest of attitude. You must always win the attitude as well as the content. You can be right and lose everybody if your attitude stinks. And that's so important in communicating. And sometimes husbands and wives, they get mad and they allow their feelings, their emotions to so overwhelm them that it doesn't make any difference if they're right in the argument. They're wrong in the attitude with which they do it. So this is where you calm down and you show calmness and confidence and say what you need to say in a humble and patient way, with meekness and with respect. This passage is the way the men of God, the women of God do. And by the way, it says the Lord's bondservant. I don't think that necessarily just means men. It means everybody. If you're going to try to help somebody come to the Lord, You've got to have these qualities. If you're going to deal with somebody who's done the wrong thing and offended you and hurt you, then have these qualities. If you got something that you need to discuss where you disagree with somebody, have these qualities. These are the things that make for peace and help people. Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion. I'm making note of that. If I ever teach this again, I'll have that same passage. You want to build people up, not tear them down. What value is it to a husband or wife to tear down their mates? And what value is it to a parent to tear down those kids and ruin those kids' whole attitude of life? To how you treat your children is important too. You want to give grace to those who hear. You want to help them. Now, if they've done wrong, say you've done wrong, but build them up. Don't leave them where they feel like they are the worst person that ever lived. And it was a terrible event. We all do wrong. We correct the wrong and we do better. It's better to say to someone, I believe that you can do this, this, and this. I believe in you. And this behavior you've had is not who the person is that I've seen you in times past. And I want what's best for you. Those are much better ways of dealing things than to put the person down and make them feel small in their own eyes. You don't want that. James 1, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God that God requires. If anyone thinks he is religious and doesn't bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. I talked about different messages of communication. There's what you mean to say, what you actually say, what the other person hears, what the other person thinks he or she hears, what the other person says about what you said, and what you think the other person says about what you said. But that's communication. That is communication. Let me say this, one more thing. Leadership and communication go together so closely. One of the most important things that anyone who is a leader is that they communicate effectively and listen effectively. Those two qualities are absolutely necessary. Messages are 7% actual words, 38% tone of voice. Now, people will believe your tone of voice, not your words. People will believe your nonverbal communication, body language. 55% of communication is body language. And your body language will betray you, and you will have a mixed message. Have you ever seen a person give a mixed message where their tone of voice didn't match their words? Or their body language didn't match their words? Or whether you've seen somebody say words of trying to pacify somebody, but you could tell in their face and in their way they said it, they don't really mean what they say. You can tell that they've lied. You know, say you're sorry. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You just were made to say you're sorry. And that's the kind of thing that we have to be very careful. It talks about some different levels of communication, cliche, conversation, good to see you. It's amazing how many times people say hello and those things, and sometimes they mean it, sometimes they don't. Reporting facts about others, sharing ideas and judgments. Sometimes that's also a level of communication. Sharing feelings and emotions. But level 1 is complete emotional and personal truthfulness, and that's rather rare. But that's what has to happen. Let's talk about things we need to communicate between husbands and wives. One is, I love you. I can't imagine any time that I've ever talked to my wife that I haven't said, especially if we're on the phone or something, I love you. That's something that needs to be said every single day, more than once a day. Stop the world 4 times a day and tell your mate you love her. These are the most important 4 minutes of your day as a married person. Number 2, I like you. I like you. We usually marry people we like as well as love. I really think being good friends is important as well as being romantically involved. Friendship is such an important thing. I enjoy being with you. You can trust me. I want us to be best friends. I will never hurt you intentionally, not with words or with actions. I want us to grow individually and as a couple. I want us to be open with each other, transparent, and I will be that way with you. You have permission to be angry with me, and let's talk about it. You know, that's a part of let's not let the sun go down on our wrath. You know, let's talk about it. If you're mad at me, let's talk about it. I will not hurt you when I am angry. If you need help, I'll give it. If we need help, we will get it. And that's important. I will be here for you always. Those are some things that need to be communicated. Symptoms of communication breakdown. He won't talk to me. Long periods of silence. Boy, don't ever have that shutting down and not being willing to talk at all. Now, it's all right to say, look, give me a little while and we'll talk about it. But to shut them out for days and days and days, that's nothing but punishment. You're not going to build a home with long periods of silence. Cruelty, physical or mental, words you use, cruel. Quarreling, especially in public. Self-pity or self-esteem, a low self-esteem can break down communication. Neglect and laxity in the home. Revenge taking or manipulation. You know, I'm going to force you to do what I want you to do. Overscheduled, always too busy. Self-defensiveness, scapegoating. Basic needs are not being fulfilled. Resentments, bitterness, hostility, and dishonesty. Those things create a breakdown of communication. Anger is a big one. What can we do to improve our communication? Let's see. Let's stop here. Let's stop here on improving communication and take a 5-minute break. And I think we can finish. I think we go up to page 41. And there's so much still that I want to get to, especially with various things. But we'll stop here at this point. One of the good things about putting things in written form is that you can always go back and be reminded. And you can also hurry through things without, when you need to. And I want us to kind of hurry it a little bit. Avoid things that cause a trigger, an unhappiness and a battle. Words can trigger reactions. Instead of using words like always or never, you always do this. Well, maybe most of the time, but always doesn't leave for any wiggle room there, and sometimes it's not always helpful. Or never, you never. Often or seldom is sometimes a better way of putting that than always or never. And people can really get into the habit of overstating the case, and that doesn't help. Do not belittle by calling names or labeling. Calling our spouses names like stupid, lazy, selfish, moron, idiot, hard-headed, ugly, fat, stubborn, cruel, or insensitive really demean them. And I suppose you could think of another dozen names, but those things really don't help at all. They just don't help. And name calling is destructive. It creates more heat than light. And to call someone a name in front of other people is just bad. That's bad. Some use name calling to punish their spouses when they are hurt. You know what? If you want to, how often a name calling gets stuck in a person's head and they think that's really true when it may not be. It may not be at all. You know, call a kid stupid. That kid's maybe not stupid. Maybe he didn't know something, but that doesn't make him stupid. It makes him unknowing, unaware. You ever been unaware of things? I have. I've been unaware of a whole lot of stuff. Do not blame or shame. Shame is different than guilt. If you talk about guilt, that means the person's either innocent or guilty. They either did it or they didn't do it. But shame is a different thing. Shame is how a person feels about himself for having done something and being guilty. To be guilty is bad, but shame follows guilt. And shame can sometimes last for a long time. People who are ashamed of themselves, they really want to punish themselves in some ways. Once a partner begins to blame, he sets in motion the need for the blamed partner to defend themselves, to counterattack. It's a losing situation, but to shame a partner and make them feel small in their own eyes, especially when it's unfair. And sometimes that happens. That's not a good thing. Instead of making you statements, speak about how I feel. You statements generally cast blame. They're accusative. I guess that's a word that we can use. Accusative is a type of a preposition, but we're not going to get into all that, or type of noun, rather. All of these statements nearly always trigger, the you statements always trigger defensiveness, blame, negative response. Rather than saying, I am angry, reveal what has happened that has hurt. When this happened, I felt, is a good way to put it. When this happened, don't say when you did this. Say when this happened, I felt. That's a much better way to do it. Talk about how you have felt. And you know what? How you feel is a true statement. If I feel angry, and I say I feel angry, that's a true statement. Now, I can change my feelings. My feelings may not last, but for the time being, it may be a true statement. And expressing your feelings is a way of expressing how things are within you and your relationship. Do not withdraw, isolate, or avoid. It's all right to take time out for a little while to get over being angry, but don't stay that way. Don't stay isolated. Do not use threats. Threats are not good, or ultimatums, not good. People who feel their situations are hopeless are backed into a corner. They're greatly frustrated and they may find themselves using threats. Threats cause our partners to become defensive, sometimes aggressive. And what happens is when people start making threats and ultimatums, what that does is raise the stakes, makes it harder and harder, and the conflict gets more difficult. And it's difficult to come out of that. Number 2, adopt a style that allows your partner to communicate. When you listen, and this is an important part, there are some things about listening that's very important. And I think this is what I was trying to say. Here are some things to do when you are listening. Number 1 is to tune out everything else and give your mate your complete attention. When you have matters to discuss, whether important or trivial, that's the time to turn the TV off. That's the time to go to the, maybe go to the table in the other room where nothing's going to distract you and sit and talk and listen. That's important. What may seem trivial to you may not be trivial at all to your mate. When your partner has spoken to you, listen with your ears, listen with your eyes, listen with your heart. If you are trying to register to be able to do Morse code, people used to do that, and sometimes people still know Morse code a little bit. But do you know the hardest part of mastering Morse code is not in tapping? The hard part is in the listening and being able to hear what somebody else has tapped out. That's where it really comes down to. One of my favorite books is The Awesome Power of the Listening Ear. And another one like that is The Awesome Power of the Listening Heart. And those were books that were quite popular in the 60s and 70s. You don't see them much anymore. But learning how to listen. Everybody needs to learn how to listen. And part of that is using your whole body to listen to a person. You not only hear what they say, you hear how they're feeling by looking at them. Their body will tell you how they feel. Their tone of voice will tell you how they feel. And that's why communicating and listening is so important. The speaker's task is to be honest and accurate with the message. The listener's task is to hear and understand what the speaker means to say. When you are listening to someone, do not interrupt. Let them finish. Let them say what they have to say. Interrupting causes spouses to feel like we don't care, that we aren't listening, that we only want to speak in response to what they've said rather than really hear what they've said. Instead of interrupting, spouses should be able to repeat what their partners have said and meant. And it might be a good thing to do for one of you to speak and the other person to repeat back what they have heard. Yeah, that's an exercise that helps us to be able to repeat what the person who spoke to you has said. And it is important to wait on all the facts. Sometimes people don't want to get down to telling you what they really want to tell you until they've kind of set the context and the history behind it. And then they finally get around to saying what they want to say. Avoid mind reading. Assuming what the other person thinks so that there's no need to listen or ask questions is both unloving and disrespectful. It is a helpful exercise to repeat what a partner has said and meant, asking your partner, did I hear what you meant to say to me? Did I accurately understand your feelings? Listening can be painful. It demands humility, concentration, and self-control to be a great listener. Daniel and I were talking about communication courses. Nearly half of counseling courses. Nearly half of a counseling course is learning how to hear, how to listen. And it's interesting to me that sometimes I can have all those skills of learning how to listen if I'm in a counseling session, but show none of those skills when I'm talking to a family member. There's time to have those skills available. It's not easy to listen, but sometimes we have to be patient and let them take their time to say what it is they want to say. They may not have figured out what they want to say. Some people don't really get down to brass tacks and saying what they want to say until they've talked a certain little bit and they've kind of talked it out for themselves. And they figured it out for themselves by talking it out. That happens. Avoid excessive fault finding and criticism. Nobody wants to hear day after day how great a failure one is. One need not be reminded daily. It's better to live in the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife or a quarrelsome husband, for all that. Proverbs 21:9. It's better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. Proverbs 21:19. As charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is the quarrelsome man for kindling strife. Anybody can be quarrelsome. Angry outbursts kill communication. Mixed messages kill communication. Now, one of the things that I think really makes a person mature in Christ, in his ministry, and in many other ways, is whenever he understands that there are some things more important than himself. And your relationship, your marriage, is more important than you personally. It's more important. And there are times when you have to affirm your love and your respect for one another. There are times whenever you need to make the relationship a priority over your own personal desires of this or that, to show them that you care by being open and honest and by listening. All of these things are important. Sometimes it is better to be defrauded, neglected, and hurt than it is to acknowledge and blame for every transgression. Sometimes you can blame way too much and point out too many problems. Love covers a multitude of sins. Yeah. God is merciful. There's a passage in the New Testament in the book of Philippians chapter 4. It's verse 5. Let your forbearing spirit be made known to all men. There are some other ways that passage is translated in Philippians 4, but that's my favorite way of how it says. What does he mean, let your gentle or forbearing spirit be made known to all men? The Lord is near. What does that mean? That means that you let everything you can let roll off your back. You have a forbearing spirit. Sometimes people make mistakes, but having one of these things where I'm looking down my nose at every little thing and I'm going to tell you all your faults, that is not a forbearing spirit. Forbearing one another with love, that's a part of what a marriage is. Forbearing, gentle, kind. That's so much a part of any family relationship, not only with your spouse, but also with your kids. If your kid only hears from your lips the things that he's done, she's done wrong. I knew a lady many, many years ago who could never please her mother. And it did not surprise me. It did not surprise me when I heard years later that she had taken her life. And all of it was because she could never please her mother. Let me tell you what, words matter. They matter big. And be very, very careful. Guard how we speak. And no matter how troubled, frustrated, or angry we become, we must guard what we say. Spoken words are not easily overcome. If you say something negative, it will take 5 to 10 things that are positive to get over that one negative statement. It really will. It's a lot harder to build that trust and that friendship back once you have been real negative towards someone. Using the word divorce can break a person's heart. This word wounds, rejects, abandons hope for a continued relationship. Spouses who use such words often plant seeds of hopelessness and failure. If there's physical abuse, unfaithfulness, or drug or alcohol abuse, then seek help to keep your marriage alive rather than start giving ultimatums. There's no greater need in a relationship than to apologize and to forgive. When you've done something wrong, apologize immediately. When your mate has penitently asked for your forgiveness, then by all means give it to him or her. Forgiveness, which is forgetting against. I have a scar right there on my chin. 5 stitches. I was 10 years old. First time I'd ever had anybody put a needle into my chin, and that chin had been split open because he pulled me off the back of a bicycle. My brother did, and they skinned up my arms, skinned up my chest. It was summertime, and 5 stitches in my chin, and they put that needle in. Of course, it was to deaden the pain, and then they stitched it up. It didn't really hurt as bad as I thought it would, but the first time I'd ever had stitches. And, for a 10-year-old boy, that was pretty. It was the same summer that the same brother caused a problem that put a scar on my side. And I didn't get to go swimming because I had that scar on my side. I don't know why, but they wouldn't let me go swimming. I could wade out into the water, but I couldn't get wet. It's too cold anyway. So it was the water. It was summer, but this was a spring with lots of cold water. Now, that happened 61 years ago, and I still have the scar. It's still there. But you know what? When I see my brother who gave me that scar, I don't say to him, "You dirty, rotten rat, you gave me a scar 61 years ago." I don't care about that scar. It doesn't make any difference. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is forgetting against. I love my brother. He felt bad about what happened. He didn't mean to do that kind of thing. And my whole point for saying that is forgetting against is what we do. 2 Corinthians 5:19. God is not counting our trespasses against us. That is forgiveness. You let things go. You let things go. And let go as much as you can let go, and you will be the better for it. You will be the better for it. If there's something you can't let go, then we'll talk about what to do about that in just a little bit. There are times to restore, times to encourage, times to edify. These are the ways you use your words in the more positive sense. To encourage, Romans 14 reminds us that we are the kind of people that can encourage one another. Galatians 6:1, you are spiritual, restore such a one, spirit of meekness, gentleness, patience. Remembering that you too have problems. 1 Thessalonians 5, we're the kind of people that can encourage. If someone verbally attacks and criticizes or blames you, do not respond in the same manner. That doesn't help. All it does is make for bigger conflict. When you have something to say, understand what you want to say and how you want to say it before you speak. Prepare to talk by anticipating feelings, moods, circumstances, and the responses of your mate. If the listener is in an unusual emotional state, he or she won't hear you accurately. If they're crying and all upset, they may not hear what you say. Pick an appropriate time to talk when you can have undivided attention. Not while the listener is involved with the television, the paper. I don't guess people read newspapers much anymore. But some do. Books, yes, they read that. Kids or a meal. I should have put on the phone. I'm going to have to update this. It is amazing how much time people spend looking at their phones. Instead of reading the paper, they look at their phone. Express your feelings. Yes, negative feelings with a minimum of emotion. But when you mention your positive feelings, do that with much emotion. You can control that. You can control it. Avoid going off on side issues which may distract from the point. Trade places. Give the listener equal time to respond. Try to put yourself in your partner's place. That's important. Avoid emotionally charged trigger words like fat, ugly, and stupid, and others that we mentioned. Speak for yourself rather than for others. Document your observations. Sometimes people don't see themselves, and it's helpful to document. State what you intend or desire. Things that will help promote good communication. Simplify your life schedule. Limit the time you watch television. Spend 30 or more minutes a day with pleasant conversation. Talk about your feelings. Explore your mate's feelings. Listen to understand. Boy, that's important. Listen to understand. Check out your assumptions. Ask questions so that you truly understand. If they say something and you wonder, well, what does that mean? Then ask a little more. Sift what's irrelevant. Don't get all caught up in things that don't matter. Show acceptance and empathy. Empathy is the ability to walk in somebody else's shoes for a little while. This doesn't necessarily mean agreement. There are some things we cannot empathize. Russ was saying to me something that I said about don't let your son marry another man. Did I say that? He said, I think I said that. That's not what I meant. I hope you understood that if I'd be upset if I had a son who married another man. Yeah. Or had a daughter who married another woman. I'd be very upset. And I would try to do what I could to break that up. But what I am saying is don't make a marriage that is right in the sight of God worse than it needs to be by your harsh attitude. Be supportive. And you know what? People can change if you help them and show them love and attention. It's amazing what they can do. Here are some strengths of happy and unhappy couples. Happy couples are satisfied with how they talk to each other. They understand. They find it easy to express true feelings. They're good listeners. Happy couples have a partner that does not make comments that put me down. I wish my partner were more willing to share feelings. Well, that's one of those, 82% of couples with problems, they would say that. I have difficulty asking my partner for what I want. My partner doesn't understand how I feel. Well, sometimes we just have to take a little time to explain. My partner often refuses to discuss issues and problems. Well, when you shut down communication, nothing gets solved. My partner makes comments that put me down. That's not a good thing. Let's talk about conflict resolution. This is something that I really wanted to get into, and we're not going to have a lot of time to spend with this. Conflict is a normal part of marriage. It will happen, but most couples have not really been taught how to handle it in a healthy way. The word conflict actually means to strike together. Webster defines it as a clash, a competition, or mutual interference of opposing or incompetent forces or qualities. Well, all that means is you've got one thing on your mind and I got a thing on my mind, and it's not the same thing. How did we learn to deal with our conflicts? Well, a lot of people learn to deal with their conflicts by watching how their parents dealt with it. Sometimes people learn to deal with their conflicts by watching how people that they've worked with deal with it, or how they have seen it modeled in their schools and other places. Our primary teachers have been our parents, and they model, and how we do things is more caught necessarily than taught. And it's amazing how much we are like our parents, even if we don't want to think so. Husbands and wives have different experiences, interests, concerns, and perspectives about resolving conflict. The best opportunity for resolving conflict will emerge when both perspectives are heard and appreciated and acknowledged. By entertaining diverse ideas and perspectives, we have the potential to unearth more alternatives that can satisfy both sides. Conflicts handled incorrectly can lead to stalemates rather than decisions, and ultimately damage our relationships. Whether the conflict is constructive or destructive will be determined by some of these things that we'll mention. This comes from H. Norman Wright in his book, Christ-Centered Marriage. I think one of the biggest conflicts I have with Jackie is every Sunday about noon when the question is asked, okay, where are we going to go eat today? Creativity means listening to everybody and trying to find a restaurant that everybody can be satisfied with. Because usually we take our daughter and her 4 children and her husband, and everybody has a different idea. And some of the kids are picky eaters, and trying to find the right place is not an easy thing. And going to a meal and having one child very upset because she doesn't like what's on the menu is real tough. Oh my. Life was that way. And we all live with the idea everybody has to be satisfied. And that's not an easy thing to do. When I was growing up, what was on the table was what I ate. If I didn't eat it, I didn't eat. But the society in which we live today, we kind of bend over backwards to let everybody be a little spoiled. Some destructive concepts. Spouses do not understand the value of conflict that naturally comes when others' opinions and perspectives are shared. Well, sometimes people just don't. They don't want to share those. They think their point of view is the only point of view, and they don't listen to other points, and so it begins to be destructive, and it creates a problem. But whenever spouses understand the need to hear the other side, so responsible decisions can be made, that's constructive. It's destructive when there's a competitive climate that implies a win-lose situation. There is a cooperative spirit and commitment to the marriage that searches for a win-win situation where everybody can feel like they have been heard and respected. Getting my own way is all important. That's destructive. Doing it God's way is all important, and that is constructive. Spouses employ all kinds of defense mechanisms, including projection, suppression, blame, withdrawal, and aggression. All of these defense mechanisms can be destructive. But spouses aren't defensive and assume that disagreements evolve from the other person's sincere concern for the marriage. Jackie may do something different than I do it, but you know what? Usually whenever she's doing something different than I do, it's because she sees some things that maybe I don't see. And what she's doing it is for the best interest of both of us. Maybe I don't understand it at first, but if I could take enough time to listen to why she wants to do what she's doing, then I could say, well, you're smarter than I am, and that's right. We should do that. A man who does not listen to his wife and give her the respect for maybe saying some things that need to be said in a way that needs to be said is being very foolish. Being very foolish. Spouses are locked into their own viewpoints at times, unwilling to consider the perspective and ideas of their mates. Spouses believe they will eventually come to an agreement that is better than any one individual suggestion. Group decisions sometimes are better than an individual's decision for this or for that. People can see the same situation very differently. Politics are very divisive. And sometimes people look at things from the standpoint of this, and sometimes other people look at it from the standpoint of that. I like this candidate, but you don't like this candidate because he's a bully and a bad guy. Well, I like his policies. Well, it's hard to understand. I guess you already know what I'm talking about. But it's really hard at times to think about things, and to be able to work it out. There's one guy that I don't like him at all as a person, but I like his policies. I didn't want to vote for him, but I sure liked the guy that was running with him. And it's hard to know how to do that and to understand perspectives. And yet I have 5 women in my family. You know, I was swimming in estrogen for a long time. And these girls said, you know, all I could remember was some of the bad things that he had done, and they were right. He was a horrible person, dealt with. Name caller, didn't like it at all. But I liked his policies. I liked what he meant, but I didn't like him. And trying to understand how they felt and trying to help them to understand how I felt helped. You know, finally voted for the guy on the Green Party. You know, well, they finally did. They wouldn't vote for either one of them. Well, it's tough, and sometimes politics is a bad thing. And these things can divide families. Sometimes doctrine divides families, teaching from the scriptures. And this is why you have to open up the book and say, well, what does God say? And let the book decide. That's a good creative way for those things. If something is right, it's right no matter who said it. If something is wrong, it's wrong no matter who said it. I get involved once in a while in discussions over versions of the Bible. And what I have determined to do with this, and I say if somebody brings up something that is a kind of a bad statement about some passage of Scripture, and I look at it, and you know what? If they're right, they're right. And you know what? The way that they translated that one passage of Scripture, if it's wrong, it's wrong. And there may be a version I don't like that translates it right. And you know what? If they got it right, they got it right. And be honest and be sincere and treat things alike. When something's wrong, it's wrong. When it's right, it's right. And let it be like that. There are problems with every translation that I know about. And so I try to judge them on the basis of what does it say? What is really what's right? And go from there. Whenever you get into personal attacks instead of focusing on the issues, that's always destructive. And when a person has to give in to personal attacks and gets away from the issue, then that's never a good thing. Disagreements should be confined to issues rather than personalities. If you have listened a long time to the search program, you have never heard me mention the name of some other denomination. Or if you did, it was a very rare, unusual occasion that was not in a context of trying to put down. I don't mention those names. I don't mention names. What I mention are issues and deal with what does the Bible teach on this matter. This day and time, people are so ultra sensitive about every little thing that when you start mentioning names, it becomes an us and them thing. So whose side are you on? All of a sudden, they're ready to draw swords and take sides. It's better to talk about issues than it is to talk about personalities. Many of the problems that we've had in the church through the years is because 2 old boneheaded guys couldn't get along with each other, and they decided one would go one way and the other would go the other way, and it always was a us and them situation. And there's a whole lot of little bitty congregations that were started that way because there was 2 fellas who couldn't get along with each other. And there's a lot of folks who lived lonely lives because they couldn't get along with each other. And they started getting personal rather than dealing with the issue. And we have to be very careful about how we deal with those things and not make things worse than they are. Personal ideas and opinions are valued over the marriage relationship. Sometimes people think about their personal opinion. An opinion is a guess in the absence of evidence. That's the dictionary definition of what an opinion is. An opinion is a guess in the absence of evidence. Everybody has a right to their own opinion. I may disagree with their opinion, but you know what? I'm guessing, and so are they. If it's an opinion, we're both guessing. Well, they can guess if they want to. I can disagree with their guests, and that's okay. And they can disagree with my guests, and that's okay, because it's not a matter of fellowship. It's not a matter of salvation. It's just a matter of the difference of opinion. And we ought to be gracious enough that in matters of opinion to have charity, to love one another. By the way, everything I'm saying is more than just for marriage. This is for with your kids, it's for with your coworkers, for everybody that's around. But learning to do those things. Roadblocks to conflict resolution is attitude. You know what? I'm going to get along with you the best that I can. When you have that attitude, I'm going to get along with you. And you set that as your goal. I'm going to get along with you. Then that's a great attitude. I'm not going to let my anger be unresolved. And I'm not going to hold on to it. That's a second thing. And thirdly, I'm going to learn how to communicate and to listen effectively. Now, 3 essential elements in resolving conflict. A lot of it is timing. Sometimes you have to let the heat that's there kind of calm down and cool off a little bit and then talk about it. Timing has a lot to do with it. When you can talk with each other without getting angry. Sometimes trust has a lot to do with it. If you trust somebody, you say to yourself, you know, this person wouldn't take that view if there wasn't a good reason for it. That they mean to do what's best. And when resolving those conflicts, helps each person to be transparent to the other, to be open with each other about these matters. Some resolution guidelines: don't avoid conflict with the silent treatment or by acting out your emotions. Keep your resentments current. Don't bring up what happened a year ago. Be willing to accept responsibility for your mistakes. Give each other person permission to call a timeout, and speak the truth in love. Being a Christian, that's what's so important. When you have a conflict, identify and define the conflict. Find out what it is. Well, Phil, you've been leaving your clothes in the bathroom floor, and then I have to go in and pick them up and put them in the hamper. You can pick up your clothes when you get ready to take a shower. You don't have to leave them in the floor. Well, no, don't have to. Well, agree to work through that conflict until the resolution is reached. You have to find a time, maybe whenever the kids are going to bed or whenever you can be alone, and do that. Explore how people feel about those issues. Well, some things are pretty evident. Identify what it is you want. I want you to pick up your clothes and put them into the hamper when you take them off, and not leave them on the chair or on the bed or in the floor. Number 5, generate options for possible solutions, and then choose what options you're going to take. I want to spend the next 10 minutes talking about the importance of how you deal with these. Many years ago, there was a woman who was flirting with a guy at work, and the husband found out about it, and it was devastating. It was devastating. And so they came and they sat in chairs. Now, this young lady had not done anything sexually inappropriate, but she had let this relationship with his coworker get a little too close, and that was not a good thing. And they came to there, and they wanted to work it out. They wanted to find out how could they do this. And so what we did is we kind of talked through what was taking place, and so that there was a clear understanding that I had and that they had of what actually did take place. And we said, okay, young lady, this is what you've done that has created this problem for your marriage. What I want you to do is to end this friendship, not the friendship, but end this way of relating to this friend, this other person, that you don't get into that kind of situation anymore. You must cease the activity. And what you promised to do, you want to apologize to your husband, number 1, sincerely, and you want to cease that activity. That's what I expected of her. And what I said to him is this. I said, okay, what I want you to do is to accept her apology. And here's what I'm asking you to do. Once you have forgiven her and accepted her apology, is that you never bring this up again. She was never to repeat the behavior. He was never to bring it up again. By having both of those commitments, what happens is this relationship has resolved that conflict. And the forgiveness means he no longer holds it against her and no longer brings it up again. And she no longer repeats it so that she can gain his trust back. That's the way you reconcile. The purpose of forgiveness is reconciliation. And in the passage of 2 Corinthians 5:19, when you get into verse 20, what we have is a ministry of reconciliation. God wanted us to be reconciled to Him. And He offered the body of Jesus to be able to atone for our sins. The purpose of atonement is reconciliation. So that He could forgive us, so that we could be friends with God again. Even though our past was with sin, which broke the friendship. The purpose of forgiveness is to reconcile. But the person repents, the person is honest about it, the person makes the promise never to do it again, and this person says, okay, I forgive you because you have sincerely repented, and I will forgive, but I will never bring it up again. Do you see how that happens? That's what has to happen whenever the offense is so serious that it is really creating this division between two people. And this is the way you reconcile. This is the way you heal a broken relationship. Forgiveness and repentance go so hand in hand, and the purpose of all of that is to heal and to reconcile. The same thing is true whether it's with a husband and a wife. The same thing is true between a brother and a brother, or a sister and a sister, or between a parent and a child. It's the same in every relationship. And this, going through this, now let me just mention to you that she did what she promised to do, he did what he promised to do, and they remained married. I talked to a lady on the phone, and it had been just the opposite. And he had gone and done something inappropriate. And she was afraid of losing him. And I sat down and we drew out a contract. I mean, we wrote it out. We wrote out the contract. I will never flirt with somebody that's not my wife and act inappropriately. And I'm sorry that I did this. And I will never do it again. And she said, okay, I understand that your apology is sincere. I forgive you, and I will never bring it up again. And I'm happy to report that happened nearly 30 years ago, and they are still married. And I was so happy to talk to her because I didn't know whether they had remained married or not. But I was glad that that happened. And that's how you resolve conflict and how you move on. The things that get us right with God are the same things that get us right with one another. You see how simple that is? But we have to go through all of those steps to get that kind of relationship. But that is how you resolve conflict. That's how you work through it. And it takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of grace. It takes a lot of grace to forgive. But if you want the marriage to last, and the marriage is more important than your pride, then you will be willing to forgive. There have been a lot of situations where marriages remain together even after adultery because of the ability to forgive. And I'm thankful for that. Well, it's almost time. You might look at the little section about the chances of divorce. I'm going to go down to the bottom paragraph and you can look at the rest of it. So if you are a reasonably well-educated person with a decent income from an intact family and are religious and marry after age 25 without having a baby first, your chances of divorce are very low indeed. Also, it should be realized that the close to 50% divorce rate refers to the percentages of marriages entered into during a particular year that are projected to end in divorce or separation before one spouse dies. Such projections assume that the divorce and death rates occurring that year will continue indefinitely into the future, an assumption that is useful more as an indicator of the instability of marriage in the recent past than a predictor of future events. In fact, the divorce rate has been dropping slowly since reaching its peak in 1980, and that rate could be lower or higher in the future than it is today. But I think it's quite interesting that a lot of times what makes the marriage is important, and it can last if two people will make it last. And whenever there are some of these things that are mentioned here, it really helps a great deal. Well, we'll stop here at this point. It's time to wrap up. I am not going to deal with the section on adultery. I'll have you read that part of it. We will start on page 45 at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll start on parenting. I do think that's an interesting read, but we not have time to do anything with it. But I did want to mention to you that a lot of times people think, oh, this won't happen. You know, if two people love each other, they care about each other, they work with each other, they can stay married for a very long time. They can. Okay, let's end with a prayer. Brother, would you lead us in prayer, please, sir?
Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for this class. Pray, Father, that the message heard and be quite well alive. Father, before we let this life, we pray to be with us, watch over God. Pray that we have a space for ourselves, for our homes, during the long run. Give us when we fall short. Yes. Thank you. Amen.